Great, thank you so much. So hello everybody, my name is Elena Weth. I am Star Principal Herald, and I have been doing Scribal for about 7 years now. And the class today is really going to just be going over basic how to design scrolls. The focus for those who are interested in taking that next step in Scribal arts, like maybe they've done a few charters, but they're not sure how to create a charter, or you're not from a charter kingdom and you want to start creating scrolls. That's going to be the focus of this event. I unfortunately did not create a PowerPoint, so we are going to be going through my handout, which I do have on the web, and so I'm going to be sharing my screen there. This is definitely a class where you are more than welcome to unmute and share your thoughts and your experiences. Any questions, you can also feel free to add them in the chat as well. So with that, we'll attempt to share my screen. All right. And hopefully you can all see that. One of the troubling problems with this is that I now can't see chat, so I'm going to rely on you guys to unmute or somebody to read out those added questions. So for designing charters and original scrolls, the first thing is to kind of decide what you're going to be making. An original scroll and a charter are very similar design-wise, but there are differences. When I say charter, Ansteorra is what we call a preprint or charter kingdom, which means that we have scrolls that are printed on a paper. It's not just copy paper, it is a thicker, nicer paper, but they are printed on a copy machine and then painted by individuals. They have been designed by a scribe, they have been, a calligraphy has been added to them. The difference is that there are spaces where names and dates and signatures should go. In Ansteorra, AOA level and grant level awards and non-armigerous awards are all preprints. That doesn't mean that a person cannot receive an original scroll, and it doesn't mean that they can't commission one later. It's our kingdom's way of making sure that a recipient of an award takes something with them. We do have charters that are based on different cultures, and that's where you guys come in, where we get folks designing new charters with new exemplars from new places. So the more charters that we have created, the more designs that we can keep in circulation, and the better we can meet somebody's persona when they receive one of these awards. An original scroll, so when you, with a charter, you're doing an artistic design and you're doing calligraphy, but you're leaving those spaces and you are not adding color. So it's almost like you're creating a page in a coloring book. An original scroll is where you do the whole thing, where you're doing the design, you're doing the calligraphy, and you are adding in the illumination, you're adding in the pigment or the metallics, the gold. So that's really the biggest difference, is that a charter is where you stop at coloring book, and original scroll is you do the whole thing. Often original scrolls are made for a particular person in mind already, but not always. You could create a baronial or a kingdom champion scroll, baronial champion or kingdom champion scroll, where you have completed everything but putting in that name, and then you put the name in, or another scribe puts the name in on site. Those would still be original scrolls because you've created the entire item beforehand. You just may not have that name until later on. So your first step, right here, first step. In Kingdom, if you want to create a scroll or a charter for the kingdom, so specifically for the kingdom, you want to talk to our Star Signet. Star Signet is the individual that is in charge of the College of Scribes. They can be reached at starsignet@herald.ansteorra.org. They keep track of our kingdom needs. They help with champion scroll assignments, and they can walk you through the process if you have any questions. They are also the person you would talk to if you're interested in designing a charter. And with charters, there's a little more that goes into the design, simply because you have to make sure that it is something that will copy well, which I'll get into in a moment. So Star Signet, if you want to do something for the kingdom, talk to Star Signet. If you're wanting to make a scroll for your local group, you should talk to, if you have a Scribal guild leader, if you have landed nobles, or your local seneschal, depending on how your group is made up. So talk to the folks in charge. You may end up talking to the event steward for your champion event to see if they have scrolls sorted for that championship. But you want to talk to them, see if they've already got somebody working on something, and if not, look at what you can offer and help volunteer create for them. And they can kind of give you assignments. And when I say assignments, both on a kingdom level and a local level, for championship scrolls particularly, sometimes those can need to fit a certain theme. So if you have a queen who is an Italian persona, she may want her queen's champion scroll to be Italian. Or if your local championship event is Viking themed or Norse themed, you may want a Norse themed championship scroll. So when you look at assignments, you want to look at that theme. And that is, in fact, you have an assignment, now what? Decide on this theme. Sometimes the theme is decided for you. Other times it's fairly open. And that's where you kind of get to explore. If you are somebody who's very into late period French manuscripts and you want to create something based on that, well, there you go. You have decided on the theme. If you aren't really sure where you want to get started, there are tons of resources online, and there are also tons of books. When I first got started, two books that I leaned on heavily were Western European illuminated manuscript. I'm sorry?
It's like that Joss saying to her dad. Oh.
I think that maybe they did not mean to be unmuted.
No marriages in the family that happened in the past 2 years were her fault?
I'm gonna assume that should be muted. So two books are the Western European illuminated manuscripts and the Introduction to Manuscript Studies, as well as a history of illuminated manuscripts. 3 books. I'm looking at them, sorry. And what's great about these type books is that they show you a variety of illumination styles across continents and across time periods. And really picking something that inspires you is going to go a long way in helping you create that item. Also, when you look at those themes, you're looking at your design, but you're also looking at the calligraphy. If you are starting out and you don't do calligraphy, that is okay. That does not necessarily bar you from creating scrolls. I didn't start doing calligraphy until last year. So almost all of the original scrolls and charters that I have created were teamwork with another scribe who can do calligraphy, because calligraphy is witchcraft. And I've only just picked out my wand. So you want to look at, if you are comfortable with calligraphy, finding hands that fit with that style that you're doing. If you are not comfortable with calligraphy, you want to collaborate with the person doing the calligraphy to make sure that they are comfortable with the hand that would be fitting for that. So if you have a calligrapher who is very comfortable with Uncial or Carolingian, but hates black letter, you probably need to stick to something that would fit that hand. Or if you yourself are all about fractor, but don't want to touch Carolingian with a 10-foot pole, you know that you're going to want to skew later in your designs. And if you're not sure what to do about a hand, start looking at those exemplars. So you can flip through books that'll show you pictures. You can find tons of websites online, but look at those exemplars. And a lot of manuscripts are getting scanned and uploaded whole cloth. And it's super amazing. It's an amazing time to be a scribe in the SEA because so much is online. So many resources are online. So you can go through and look, and you can see pages of text next to that carpet page or next to that decorated initial. And it can help you match up what hand would best go with that picture that you want to recreate. So you've got a theme, you've got your exemplar. Next step would be supplies. Supplies can vary a great deal depending on what you're doing. If you're just doing the calligraphy, or if you're doing the whole work, if you're doing just a charter, your supply list is going to vary slightly, but there are some constants. You're going to probably want mechanical pencils. I do all of my work in usually a 5mm. I'll have a 5mm pencil and a 7mm mechanical pencil, and I like it because I can get thin lines and thick lines. Now, when I'm designing a charter, I want thicker lines, so I will design my charter with a 7mm pencil. If I'm making an original, I'm not worried about having to copy those lines over, so I will use a 5mm. Erasers. Erasers are going to be your best friend. I like the white pencil erasers. You get them in the squares. They come in the pencil style click erasers. I have lost all my erasers because that's part of the course. But you want to make sure that you are using an eraser that will not leave marks and will not leave oils. And I say this especially for creating originals because like those kneaded erasers that artists use, those, when you knead them, you're kneading in your hand oils. So when you go to erase where calligraphy needs to go, it could deposit oils, which means when you go to write calligraphy, you end up with an oil slick, and it makes your ink feather like crazy. So erasing, and really where you put your hand in general, can be like, it's something that you have to do with intent and with thought. And that's why I use those white erasers. They don't leave anything behind, and I'm not leaving oils or streaks that have messed up my calligraphy later on, or my paint later on. Micron pens. I use Micron pens for both designing charters and original scrolls. The microns are usually my final layer on a design for a charter, whereas they are my defining border for my original works. And they're also my cleaning up all my edges for after I paint. Micron pens come in, Micron is actually a brand name, but they are pens, archival quality ink pens that you can get at most craft stores. They come in several different sizes. I use Micron, it's like 005, 05, 01, and there's one other that I will use, but it's like 0.25 millimeters, the 0.01, there's the 01. I use tiny, and you will, if you look, it's, I hate to be that teacher that says, just look at it and you'll know. But you can look at the size of the tip of the microns and kind of judge whether or not it's going to give you too thick or too thin of a line. If it's too thin, you can always go over it again. If it's too thick, you are stuck. Graph paper. This is something that not all scribes use, but I do. I love me some graph paper. I like that 8x8 super tiny squares graph paper, and I tend to get graph paper in various sizes based on the type of work I'm doing. I have pads of 8.5 by 11 because most award scrolls, or I would say most championship scrolls, are 8.5 by 11. Whereas our charters are on an 11 by 17. So I like to also have a pad of 11 by 17 hanging around so I can lay out the entire page how it's going to be copied later on. I also feel much more comfortable using the grid to lay out because I am not an artist by training. All of the art that I do is a CA trained, and I feel much more comfortable having those grids. Not everybody needs that, so your mileage will vary there. But I draft everything on graph paper, and the drafting I'll talk about is talking about drafting on graph paper first. Transparent to graph rulers. Again, so there are actually two types of rulers that I suggest, and I'm holding up rulers like you can see me. I think you can see a tiny picture of me. There are corked back rulers that I love, and they help, the cork helps so that you don't get any ink wicking under your ruler when you're going to make straight lines with a pen. But I also love the clear plastic rulers that you get in the, like, engineering is probably not the right area or the term for the area, but all the drafting supplies, there you go. Drafting supplied areas and quilting supply areas actually will have excellent and many different sizes of graph rulers. And I love those because I can see what I'm doing and making sure that things are straight, as well as straight in relation to the rest of my design. A light box, if you want one. Light boxes and tracing is a very period thing to do. Because I draft and make mini drafts, I use a light box to transfer my designs. I have used everything from the $20 Crayola light box that you can get at Walmart to the really fancy USB LED light boxes that are run from $50 to $100 on Amazon. I know that there are those who will use a window. I've stuck a lamp underneath a glass end table just so that you get the light. So you don't have to go crazy on expense with a light box, but light boxes can make your work much, much simpler. You will want clean white paper. So you've got your graph paper, you will want clean white paper, and this goes for either original scrolls or for charters, at least for me, because I like to take my drafted design, I then draft it onto, or I transfer that design to clean white paper, and then I take that and transfer it to the final page. You don't have to make that second step, but you can. Oh, hey, I found the chat. Theodora Focus mentions that a flashlight in a cloudy plastic box works really well for light box. Yes, it does. Having that cloudiness helps diffuse the light, and I feel really helps with the effectiveness of light boxery. It's magic, but I love it. I will move chat over here. I don't know if y'all can see that or not, so I don't want it duplicating on your screen. And then finally, your final paper. So I wrote this. I have a preference for Arches Hot Press 140 pound. Arches, the brand, is a brand that was around in period. They started in 1492. You can get their hot press blocks of paper in at several different online stores. Sometimes you can get them in specialty artist shops, but you want to get the hot press versus cold press. Hot press has a much smoother, flatter surface than the cold press. Cold press is often textured. Bristol paper is also an excellent option to choose. Then you can get Bristol paper from just about any arts and crafts store that you can think of. And really, when you're looking at paper, you want smooth. And you want smooth because any little texture, bump, divot can affect how you write as well as how you paint. And you don't want your brush or your pen catching on those areas. And especially if you're newer to creating, it can be heartbreaking to have to then try to figure out how to fix, you know, an ink sploot because your nib caught. So hot press, smooth paper, it's good stuff. Are there certain awards that mandate use of animal skin parchment? I'm so glad you asked, Stephanie. No. My passion is creating parchment. I helped kind of set up the Ansteorran parchment project here in Ansteorra, and I will teach parchment making to anyone who can hold their attention span. Like, if I catch you for more than 2 minutes, I will put a lunellum in your hand if I have the ability. In Ansteorra, we make a concerted effort to provide parchment for every peerage scroll, every I want to say that, like, county or duchy scroll, and our kingdom championship scrolls. So we will put you can put anything on parchment, absolutely. And in Ansteorra, we make a concerted effort to make parchment available to newer scribes so they can get the experience of working on parchment. There's no requirement, but it's a fun substrate to use, and I can literally talk for hours on that as well. And if you do come to a parchment working day, a parchment workshop, you get loot. You get to take some of what you make home with you. So that's another incentive to come make parchment with me. You get some to take home. And that is also true if you come meet me at Gulf War and I put you to work there next time we meet. Wood. And this is not, so you can also, before I move on, I do want to address other substrates. If you have somebody who wants you to work on papyrus, work on papyrus. It is its own beast, and talk to somebody who's worked on papyrus before. If you have some beautiful linen paper that you want to use it. As you explore different substrates, see if you can get scraps to test on, so you know how your brush is going to move and how your pen is going to move. Did somebody have an add-on? Nope. Okay. So, drafting. So the first step, like, you've got your design idea and you know what hand you're going to use. You've seen the exemplars. You need to plot out what is in your head and put it on a page. So you want to create with a basic layout. My first step when I do a basic layout is to block out my margins. Living in this American South, it is very important that our works get matted, that we don't have glass directly on paint, because humidity, even from just taking something from outside where it's awarded to inside where it's going to be displayed, can make the paint adhere to the glass and away from the paper or the parchment. So it's really important that things get matted, and things just kind of look nicer when they're matted. So what I will do is I will actually get pre-cut frames that are fairly cheap from hobby stores, and I will trace out the box. I'm like, okay, all of my work needs to go in here. So I've got my graph paper, lay down my matted frame, draw my box. Everything needs to go in there. I will try to give myself like a 1/4 inch space, 1/4 inch of space from where that final line is, as my really try to stay in here, but if you have to go out, there's your absolute, there's the stay in the lines, no really, you can't go any further than this or it won't be seen, if that makes sense. When I'm not working with something that's pre-matted, I will give myself an inch border around, and then kind of sketch in my 1/2 inch. So I try to keep all of my work within the 1 inch, but if I'm working on something small or something very elaborate and I need to cut into my margin, I've got that 1/2 inch of play. And what I will, yes, fudging the margin, yes. I best laid plans, and I can show you a piece I've got, several, where I'm like, I'm gonna be good, everything's gonna fit, I will have an inch border, it will be great, And then I'm like, okay, at least I got it to fit in. I've still got a ½ inch all the way around. I'm good. And then I want to enter like some little doodle and I have to hold back because I know that is the point of no return. It will not be seen if it's past that line. So first, here I am. I'm going to sketch it on graph paper. And I mean sketch. Like, this is where I play around with, I sketch out the idea, I try to start refining it. I get to a finalized version on the graph paper. And sometimes I will ink the design with a Micron pen on that graph paper so I know what lines I'm specifically transferring over. Sometimes I'll skip that step if I feel like my final design in pencil is dark enough. Your mileage is going to vary there. That and how much time you've given yourself to finish this work. So I've got my design on my graph paper. I'm going to take my clean piece of paper, transfer it to the clean piece of paper. I feel like this clean piece of paper will show you, it will highlight any sins, and it also gives you muscle memory. As I said, I'm not a trained artist, so having all of these extra steps helps me immensely feel much more comfortable with the design I've created, much more comfortable with the swirls, with the lines. I get a better feel for it, and sometimes I do tweak between my final graph design and my final clean paper design. But I will do the pen or pencil, and then I will do Micron. Again, if I'm really running short on time, I will do it in pencil and make it very, very dark and skip the Micron. Once I have this design and it's full glorified form, that is when I will transfer it to the final page, if it's on fancy paper. If it is a charter design, you transfer it onto an 11x17 piece of copy paper. But, you know, no erases, one clear black line is what you're looking for, because a copy machine will show everything. So that's where it's a little different in designing for a charter versus designing for an original. I can do little minor tweaks because even if I draw with pencil and then go over in pen later on my original, I'm going to be painting over things, so I can hide some of those variances and wavinesses, those bits that show you it's handmade. But my method does include a lot of steps because it is the way I am comfortable. Everybody's method is a little bit different. And your comfort with your materials and your comfort with art in general is going to really dictate what drafting system you find most comfortable and what you kind of settle into. Like this was what I settled into after a couple of trials and errors, trying to work out what worked for other people and then what didn't work for me. So things to consider. Look at your award size before you start drafting. For Ansteorran awards, there are set sizes, and I've actually got them on this page. You can also see them at heraldry.ansteorra.org/docs/award_text, or you can just Google Ansteorran award text and it pops right up. You don't necessarily want to design. Get you muted. I'm going to try to mute. There we go. You don't want to draft out a 16x20 AOA charter design because our charter designs are for AOA are 9x12. So I would hate for you to do a lot of work on a charter specifically, but also Kingdom Awards are more fluid size-wise, but if you're designing a charter and you design it the wrong size, we can fix it and we can like scan it and blow it up and we can use technology, but I would hate for you to feel that moment of panic or frustration at having spent so many hours on something that isn't correct. So make sure you know what the size requirements are for your awards. Again, I harped on this a lot. Do not forget your margins so that people can mount your work. When you're creating a draft, keep a copy of the award text handy and make sure that you're leaving enough space for text and for signatures. We've gotten some beautiful award scrolls that did not leave enough room for signatures, and we've had some beautiful designs started. I have designed some stuff where I got it to my calligrapher and I got like laser eyes because I didn't think to leave enough space, and nib sizes only go so small. So you want to make sure that you are leaving enough space for the calligrapher. I tend to write in all caps, and I will write out all of the words of the scroll so that I have a general space and to see if it will fit in. That's what tends to work for me, and others may have different ways of measuring it out, but for me, I'm like, if I can write it all out, somebody can go in calligraphy wise and get it in there. For signatures, I suggest leaving at least a space that's 1 inch high and 2 inches wide. That's at least enough space for a sigil and a little label underneath that says King and Queen or Rex Regina. Make sure that your calligraphy and your design match up. If you're using a special script like Faux Arabic, make sure that you include a cheat sheet for the award text. I made a King's Champion scroll for now Count Vlad. I can't remember his appropriate Ottoman title, but it was in a Faux Arabic script, and I did not use our standard text. I tweaked it, and so I left a copy on the back of the scroll, and then I had an extra copy because inevitably that scroll text disappeared. So always have a copy for yourself and a copy that goes with the scroll that says, in just typed out words, what the award text says. You know, it's the cheat sheet. Your heralds will love you for it. And then if time management, and I'm a do as I say, not as I do, and there are probably other scribes feeling called out a little bit as well, but you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to do justice to the piece that you're wanting to create. If you are not comfortable with the style, make sure you give yourself a little more time to do that draft, to get comfortable with the style, to do extra drafts if necessary. It's okay to say, I'm going to need a little more time because I'm new at this style. Or you need to do extra research on exemplars. Like, oh, I would love to do that scroll for you, but I'm really not familiar with Croatian illumination from the 15th century, so I'm going to need to do a little extra research, you know, build in a little bit more time. Don't be afraid to do that. So that's all of my thoughts and thinkings on drafting. For charter designs, here's where charter and originals can deviate. Less can be more. The nice thing about charters is that they can be embellished by the illuminator later on. So you can add fiddly bits, but remember those fiddly bits may not be easily painted. You can suggest fiddly bits be done in the bottom, and you can provide examples of adding in those fiddly bits, and that gives that charter a little bit of originality because each scribe is going to add fiddly bits differently. And that's kind of a really nice thing. But when you're designing charters, you really do want to think about making a coloring book page. You want bigger, bolder lines than you might consider when you're creating an original. You want, like, I try to stick to a 0.3 millimeter Micron pen. So my 7 millimeter pencil, my 0.3 micron. Remember that negative space is really what you want to focus on when you're creating a design, because that is what's being painted. A lot of times, I know for me when I'm creating an original, I I'm thinking about all of it and where I can paint and how I can add things. When I'm creating a charter, I have to really think about what negative space am I leaving? Is it paintable? Is it too small? Is it too big, too much? And what can an illuminator do with it? Like, is it something that a basic painter can do? Is it something that an intermediate or an advanced person can do and have fun with it? When you're creating a charter, look at the award text, see if there's anything that you must include. So you want to make sure you're leaving enough space for the text, but you're wanting to also make sure if there is a badge for that award, that you're including the badge. So if you're creating a Sable Thistle, which is the AOA level for arts and sciences, we have a badge for the Sable Thistle. So you want to add the thistle, you know, add a circle or add a place for that thistle to be on that scroll, because it gives that extra, like, yep, this is definitely a Sable Thistle just looking at it. Not every charter has to have borders on all four edges. In fact, non-Armigerous and Armigerous awards are usually a little simpler than grant level awards, and this is twofold. One, because grant level awards are a little more prestigious, and also when you have fewer borders, they are faster to paint. We statistically give out far more AOA level awards than we do grant level awards. So we need far more AOA level awards. And the faster they are to paint, the faster they are to turn in and then hand out. So often you will see non-Armigerous or Armigerous where there's a big fancy versal and one line, one border, or you know, maybe an L-shaped border, whereas grants may use an L-shape or an arch. And I think we have one that had, or a couple now that are full 4 border. That is not to say that you must stick to these rules, but it is a general rule of thumb that the grants are 1 to 2 sides, or the AOAs are 1 to 2 sides, and the grants are 3 to 4. So kind of keep those thoughts in mind as well when you're coming up with charter designs. So when you're completing your final design for a charter, as I mentioned before, you want to complete it on an 11 by 17 plain white piece of paper that is aligned to the page. So when you are drafting out, the bottom 3 inches of an 11 by 17 are kind of care and feeding of scrolls, and this is how you paint the scroll. It's all the instructions. So when I take my 11 by 17, I automatically draw a line, a hard line at 3 inches from the bottom, and I know that is dead space to me. I'm not using that, the Kingdom is. So I'm now down to 11 by 14. And then I will draw my borders in based on the size of the award that I'm creating. So I will draw the hard, like this is the end of the end in quote marks. This is the end of the page, and then go from there. When you are creating a charter, you also have to complete a release form for your design work so that the Kingdom can replicate this design. For originals, again, please check the sizing for the text, sizing for the award in general, and any badges that you should consider. Again, that award text document is going to help you loads, but I do have the scroll sizes listed here. I don't have badges. And also remember that these sizes are strong suggestions. I will say that one thing that we have done in Ansteorra is that as we have given parchment to peers, with a peerage scroll, I will just scroll down here, peerages can be 16 by 20. Like you can get a 16 by 20 peerage scroll, but we give 11 by 14 parchment pages because of the size and the expense of creating the material. So a peer could go out and get somebody to make a 16 by 20 scroll for them on whatever substrate they decide, whatever they pay for or provide. But they don't have to be that size. You can give a beautiful prize scroll that's 4 by 6 or 5 by 7. It's smaller, but you know, if you're doing it on parchment, maybe that's the difference between the smaller scroll versus an 8.5 by 11 on hot press. Don't let these sizes scare you off on doing smaller work if you'd like to do smaller work, or if price is an issue and you need to do smaller work. The only time that size is a hard and fast rule is going to be for those charter designs. So the fun thing with designing an original is that you are designing something that you are going to be painting right away. So you can do a little fudging and you can add flourishes, add additions, you can play with the white work, and you have a little more freedom because it's a one-off, and what you do here is, you know, you're doing all of the steps. And you're also able to personalize original designs to an extent. So if you have been commissioned to do a scroll for someone, well, you know who they are. You don't have to leave any blanks for names. You do need to leave a blank for signatures, though. You do not get to do crown or royal signature or baronial signatures. Talk to somebody else for those. But you can make it to their liking. You know, if they want a Norse peerage scroll, you can do all the research and draft, you know, put something together and make it very personalized for them. Maybe they are an English persona and they really love cats, so you hide little cats in vine work. So that can be a lot of fun and really, it's a really fun and nice thing to do. When you're creating originals for champion scrolls, you are a little more limited because you don't know exactly who's going to be getting it, but you can design to the group they're going to be the champion of, and you can design to, like, if it's the king or queen or the kingdom, or if it's a baronial award to that specific baron or baroness. So I'm from the barony of Lochsolier. Our armory has a snake eating its own tail, Noroborbus, or it's actually a sea serpent, so it's got a fish tail instead of just a pointy tail. And so we do a lot of things with our soily on it. So if I'm creating a championship scroll, I may borrow or you know, take from that theme for the scroll. So again, I've got the prize scrolls. So the like championship scrolls, those are usually 8.5 by 11, as are our non-Armigerous awards. Our Armigerous awards, so our AOA levels, are 9 by 12s. Grants are 11 by 14, as are court baronies and white scarves. Lions can have whatever they want because they're super special. Peerages, counties, and duchies are 16 by 20. And then nobility are 18 by 24. That would be former landed nobility, I believe. I gotta look that up. But all of these are the kind of the extent of. Honestly, if somebody asks you to do something larger or smaller and they're providing the materials, like, there's no Scribal or Heraldic police that's going to like shake their finger at you and tell you no, don't do it. You just have to be aware of the bigger you do, the more you have to pay attention to how details look and your coverage of materials. The smaller you do, it's kind of the same thing. You have to pay attention to those details, but you can get away with a little less, depending on what your design looks like. For resources, Ansteorran word text. So this is my personal website. I, again, apologize for not creating PowerPoint for you guys. So elenaweth.wordpress.com. So I've got this there. This is also on the heraldry.ansteorra.org website, as well as our Kingdom page. So the Ansteorran award text. And then the British Library is one of many libraries that has been scanning manuscripts. The Digital Scriptorum, there's digitized medieval manuscripts, New York Public Library collections. There are a ton of collections out there. And so I've just linked a few. But honestly, I have found that Google image search or Google search and Google image search are also a great starting point. So if I'm looking for 16th century Persian illumination, I can type that in and get a good start. And then that's where the rabbit holes begin, because you click on something that gives you a link and gives you an image, and you can start searching more specific exemplars. I also have listed here a few suppliers. Ancient Earth Pigments is great for pigments. Dick Blick, I think I got my paper from them, actually, paper, gouache, brushes. The Guild of Limners, Jerry's Artorama, who is actually, they are local to the Houston area. I believe they have a few other locations as well. John Neal Bookseller, they do have an SCA discount of 10%, I believe. Natural Pigments, Pergamena, and the Scribal Workshop. This is not inclusive. I need to actually add some more folks. Yeah, Jerry's Artorama is an awesome as well. I believe that they were a Texas chain. Dick Blick, I believe, is more on the coast. Like I said, this is a few, but we also have a lot of resources on the Book of Faces through Scribal groups. There are a lot of websites out there. Designing is a lot of fun. It's where I found my excitement. I'm going to stop sharing now so that I'm talking to you and not to a weird screen. I'm at least going to try. Okay. So yeah, designing is where I found my jam in the Scribal world of SEA, that and creating tools. So you don't have to, if you get into it and you decide that you don't like the painting part, you like the design part, that's totally cool. Find somebody else who is not keen on drawing lines but loves painting or loves adding details. Scribal can be a team sport. Otherwise, I would have probably stopped and cried long time ago. But I'm hoping that this was a little helpful on how to get started on drafting and just designing original scrolls. I'm happy to open up the floor. I've got about 5 to 10 minutes for questions. And feel free again to jump in the chat or to unmute. Or you can also share your own suggestions for suppliers or tips and tricks.
So, you know, when you said that, you know, Ansteorra has those set scrolls for charters, but not necessarily for originals. And that's really more of a guideline. If you look over my shoulder, you will see a full page original scroll that I did. And it's a period scroll. It was one of the first that I did calligraphy on, and it has come home. So yeah, so I would just encourage scribes, if they want to go that large, go that large. Mm-hmm. If that is something that appeals to them, or it's what, if you're doing an original, what the patron wants, then yeah, you know, if you can afford it, or if they can afford it, or whatever, and you're comfortable doing it, even if you're not comfortable doing it, but you think you're almost there, give it a shot. It's well worth it. This was one of the most fun things that I had to try to figure out, because figuring out how to take this 26 by 36 piece of paper and putting ink on it. Yeah, that was a bit of a challenge, but it was fun.
I imagine that working big and working small both have their logistical, like, similar but different processes of making sure that the page looks full and appropriate. But yeah, I've done one big thing and I was like, I will work small from now on. But I like, the big stuff is so awe-inspiring that yes, absolutely. If you have the chance to do big, I don't want anything I said to make you think big is bad. It's the also big is not required.
Yes,
but yeah, I love big stuff.
And because I started big, I find it very difficult to go small.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
We all have our little things, and I love it.
Yes, it's awesome.
If I had, like, now I know, if I have another huge thing that I've got to draft, I would be like, hey, help.
Yeah, and I mean, and when you said, partner up, if you prefer to do the illumination or even just the design work and getting the lines down, and somebody else enjoys doing the illumination part and somebody else enjoys doing the calligraphy part, well, then work as a team. It can be a team thing, and it really is much more rewarding, and you'll find that you're not spending hundreds of hours on a single piece, and it frees you up to do more things down the road as well. So
not only does it make the dream work, but you get more time to do more things. Even more scroll work. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, drafting is, I really love drafting, and there are all sorts of nifty tools that you can like get into, and I didn't go deep into them. I probably could have, but between compasses and then the templates for circles, I spend a lot of my craft store time in the drafting section for tools for creating charters and original scrolls.
So if you do calligraphy and you're trying to work very diligently on keeping your lines straight, get yourself an Ames lettering guide. Best thing in the world. The little hooper joopers.
There we go.
Yes. Those have saved my bacon so many times.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I don't have on my list is actually painter's tape.
Ooh.
Painter's tape doesn't leave a lot of schmuck on your page, and it's good, especially when you're transferring a design, to have everything securely taped down so that you don't move it slightly and then have to completely redo a draft after you've already finished most of it. Not that I speak from experience, I speak from experience. But yeah, so there's a lot of fun stuff in the drafting section of stores. Also, those the bendy rulers can also help with. I know some people who use the French curves. I like the bendy rulers because then I can make it whatever curve I need, so long as I'm not having to replicate that curve again, or I'm tracing and I can match the ruler straight up with it. But yeah, French curves and bendy rulers are also fun tools to work with.
So there's about 5 minutes left, but I was going to show something that I use. I have a drafting board with a locking ruler that can slide up and down on size, and that's really helpful with lines too, and marking things out.
That's awesome.
And it's like about $30 on Amazon.
That is fantastic. Ooh, I love it. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, that is drafting in a nutshell. I'm always open to questions. If you can reach me on Facebook, Elena Weth, my website. You can also reach me at elenaweth@gmail, or for the next 2 years at kingdom@herald.ansteorra.org. You see that Gunthormer's in, so you can always pass the host hat to him.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I just figured I would connect in time so that I wasn't doing the Bluetooth runaround.
No, you were totally fine. We're just ending, and I'm like, I know what it's like to be like, okay, let's switch over. Let's make sure everything works. But yeah, Serena, I'll let you end the recording and pass off the hat.